Well, thank you very much for those amazing presentations, which have created a literal tidal wave of questions in for this Q&A, which is absolutely no surprise to us here. Our professionals conference is always packed. So I'm not going to hang about. I'm going to dive right in, and we're going to get through as many as we can. So first, thank you very much, Dr. Sergouniotis. Thank you for joining us. We have a question for you. So does the pathway for obtaining a genetic test via the local ophthalmologist also apply to patients in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland?
So unfortunately, no. So it's a different pathway. So this is the situation in England. We are working to find some ways of testing, but those are genetic testing for areas in England, funded by NHS England. Scotland has a slightly separate but similar approach that they're trying to coordinate, and we are in touch with our colleagues in Cardiff to see what will happen in Wales, but unfortunately not at this stage.
Thank you. For the Retina UK team, with the clinical search function, do people have to go to their nearest clinic, or if they have a preference, can they ask to be referred to a clinic of their choice?
Is it okay if I take that one, Kate?
Absolutely.
Certainly in England, all of the funding has been centralised. So that does mean that people can choose to go to whichever clinic is the most appropriate for them. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work across borders, but certainly in England, yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Great. Thank you, Denise. So I think this one is slightly more on Kate's side. Is Unlock Genetics just aimed at patients with IRDs, or will patients with other genetic conditions be able to benefit from it? Are there plans to collaborate with any other groups and roll it across other genetic conditions?
That's a good question. Obviously, at Retina UK, we're focused on inherited retinal conditions, and that was our absolute focus for producing this resource. That said, I'm sure that somebody with a different type of condition could perhaps benefit from some of the more general information about genetics and inheritance patterns, certainly, and indeed about genetic testing and what happens and how genetic counsellors can help. So I think there's no reason why that information has to be specific to inherited retinal conditions. We will have to see, how this resource rolls out and how we perhaps use it more widely with other organisations in the future.
Yeah, certainly we can look at that through the sectors that we work in and communicate that out to our professionals as well as our community for use. That'd be great. So Panos, I have one for you. How feasible is it to test everyone at birth for Refsum's disease? It is a condition that can be treated by diet.
That's a good question. I think testing early on, so this is in lots of these science fiction movies, you see this, we're going to get one test at birth, our genome, and then we'll get all our risk and so on and so forth. I think the problem is that the tests are not perfect, and the same thing applies for Refsum. So we will get lots of false positives, so things will be flagged up and it might be nothing in the end. So I think at this point, Refsum is not in the newborn screening, and it's not something that is being done. Is it feasible? It is, but we do need to kind of do the number crunching, because it does generate lots of anxiety if you get something that, oh, this child has Refsum, and then you just figure out that it doesn't work. So it's quite important to refine the test, and I don't think the test is there yet.
Okay, so you mentioned just picking up on the false positives. What sort of process can people be referred to if that sort of situation is happening? Because I know, terminology like false positives is quite worrying and quite triggering, shall we say?
Yeah, so this is a big part of what we do in our multidisciplinary team meetings. So we get a result and we're trying to interpret it. And many times it's a clear-cut result, so you get a very obvious genetic change that explains everything. But in other situations, we are encountering some genetic changes that are of unknown significance, as we call them, so variants of unknown significance. And there, we just get all together with all the specialists, and sometimes we do within our institution or even national multidisciplinary team meetings where we try to explain some variants.
Right.
And then we are trying to come up with a consensus between ourselves, our colleagues in the genetic laboratories, our genetic counselors. How are we going to present this result? So this is, it sounds worrying, but we have a very good safety net for that, and we are trying to get all the information to the person after kind of passing it through all the specialists.
So certainly one key point I've picked up from that is the importance of the multidisciplinary team around a family who are living with these groups of conditions, and gaining as much information and colour as you can is really a key point there. Another question for Panos. Can a family who do not have the condition themselves but have a family history of visual impairment access genetic testing, for example, for family planning purposes?
That's a very good question. There are certain conditions that we would do that for. So we would do, there are different types of genetic testing, let's put it that way. So if you have a condition and you want to look for diagnostic testing, you will do it. We have what we call predictive testing, where you have a person who is unaffected and you just want to have a test to see, am I going to get affected? Mm. So predictive testing is done only in very specific circumstances. In any case, what I would recommend is if someone has concerns about it, they should just get in touch with a genetic counselor or with a GP who can refer them onwards. And from there, we can discuss the issues there. We deal on that on a person-by-person basis. But most of the times, we're just trying to explain to people that genes are not destiny. This test is not going to give you a perfect answer. And we're just trying to tease out if the person is really prepared for the bad news or for uncertainty. So it's something that we try to deal with quite sensitively.
Okay, so as a first port of call, if one of our attendees today has a client or a family group, the first port of call would be the GP for that activity, to have the initial discussion.
Yeah, so essentially they need to speak with a genetic counselor. It's different settings, it's done differently. Sometimes you can just approach, but usually it's done through a GP or genetic counselor.
That's great, thank you. So a question for Kate. How does someone go about getting themselves referred for a genetic test?
Okay, so it depends what situation they're in. We know there's a proportion of our community who no longer are under the regular care of an ophthalmologist, and in that situation, I would say they should, as a first port of call, just go back to their GP and have a discussion with them. They might find the For Professionals page from our new resource useful in that discussion. But their GP can then refer them onwards either to one of the specialist clinics we've listed, or even just to their local ophthalmology department, who can probably start to move things forward. If somebody's already under the care of an ophthalmologist, regular care of an ophthalmologist, it's best to have that discussion with their ophthalmologist, who may be able to get the testing underway themselves. They may be able to draw the blood and send that off and request the appropriate test, and then refer on for any genetic counselling that's needed. Equally, that ophthalmologist, if they feel they need to, will refer onwards to one of the specialist clinics. I hope that sounds about right, Panos.
That's spot on. That's exactly what we're trying to develop. I can give you a specific example for the Northwest. So there's a tertiary center in Manchester, but of course there are other hospitals in the area. So if someone presents to the hospital at Bolton, which is a town nearby, the ophthalmologists are very happy to start the process there. So they can draw the blood so that the test gets underway, and then they will either get the result through the local ophthalmologist if it's straightforward, or depending on the situation, we might get them to Manchester, where we kind of deliver the result. But it gets the ball rolling much faster than send a referral over to Manchester, get on that waiting list, have the blood test, and wait for the result. So that's what we're trying to develop here. It's not working like that in every area, but I think the local ophthalmologist has a key role. That's what I'm trying.
We've had a great follow-on question for this particular theme. So if a genetic test doesn't identify the causative gene, is there any sort of automatic or national process which repeats that testing when more genes and mutations have been identified?
I can take that if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
So it's an excellent question, this one. So we are working on it, is the answer. So we know that these tests get better and better with time. So we also know that sometimes we don't get an answer. So, and this is one of the important things we're trying to tell people when we do the test. There are really 3 possibilities. 1, we get an answer. 2, we don't get an answer. 3, we get something that we're not very sure about and we need to do some more tests. So in the cases where we don't get an answer, ideally what we would want is to go there in sort of 5 years potentially and test some more newer genes. That's not done automatically at the moment. But we're trying to keep the contact between the family and the genetic counselor, and this is a key in this kind of discussions that we usually do every couple of years with some families. If there's a new test, we get in touch. So we do that in Manchester. It's not done automatically in every region.
Yeah, I certainly know historically from our community that process can be quite arduous because the length of time it can take to get a result or no result, unfortunately. So we certainly applaud Manchester for keeping that contact because we know that's incredibly important. So thank you very much. Okay, another question, perhaps very, very popular with the questions today. Some people have stopped attending ophthalmology appointments as they don't see the point, and we hear this all the time at Retina UK. Is there any way to let primary care optometrists know the new information is available and how they can get referred for genetic testing to keep that interest in the patients?
Again, a brilliant question. It's a little bit tricky because there are different conditions, and of course what matters is how the individual feels. But what also matters is to give them all the information, why it is important to keep in touch, why it is important to have some sort of review process. And what we are doing in Manchester in this case is what we're offering is what we call a notes review. So we are taking the notes again in a couple of years, and we give a ring to the people, and then we say, this is what is new. Would you like a further appointment? Is everything okay? Would you like any further support? So I think that's what should happen in an ideal scenario. So I completely understand why some people don't want to go to the eye clinic and wait and get another scan of their eyes, and someone tells them it's better or it's worse or it's the same. So I completely understand that point of view, but I think it's a very fast-moving field, and it's key to maintain that contact, either through their kind of genetic counselor or through organizations like Retina UK. So I think there's lots of things happening, and we're quite keen to at least keep some contact, even if that doesn't involve being seen in clinic and having tests. Okay,
and to follow on mildly from that, can you explain a bit more about where all of the data is held? I think it means specifically patients, I imagine, and how it can, or if there's any plans on how it's going to be used in the future.
Yeah, that's a very important topic for me. So for me, data is trust. So and we are very, very conscious. What do we do with this data? How do we use them? There are safeguards about this. So there's a national database that this is kept under the NHS umbrella. There is value into sharing data. So let's say the genetic test from Manchester with the genetic test from Oxford or from London, that those are shared because we can interpret things better. So that is being developed where we pull them together in some sort of national database. This is held under the NHS umbrella. So it's secure. And we try to anonymize where we need to, where we can.
Thank you. I wonder if at this point, Kate, it might be useful just to give the audience a very, very quick overview of the UK RDC project that we fund, which has got some sort of activity around looking at gene hunting, etc.
Yeah, so that's purely a research project, and I know that PADOS is involved with that as well, as Manchester are a key centre for that. So this is a collaborative project involving Manchester, Leeds, Oxford and London primarily, to gather samples from people with IRDs who do not have a genetic diagnosis, for whom the current panel tests do not reveal a result, and to take their samples and then search through them, basically using the most sort of up-to-date technology and computer software and lots of wizardry to try and understand better these changes that up to now we've not been sure about, try and identify new genes, and better understand new changes that have been discovered. And that's produced some really interesting insights. New genes have been discovered, new mechanisms of genetic change have been discovered as well. So yeah, that's a really important and interesting project, but it is a research project. So it's different from that sort of a result that might come back through that, or something that might happen with somebody's sample is different to the confirmed diagnostic result you would get from an NHS test. And I can see that Panos, I think, would like to add to that, because often, Panos, perhaps if you could address, I think what people's often concern is I've given a sample to research. How do I sort of keep track of what happens to my result and my sample?
Yeah, that's a brilliant overview. What I wanted to say is that this project has been a proper game changer for us, because when you go into these consultations where you have a negative result with the family, with all the expectations, having this opportunity to say, we have a negative result, but we will take that on for research, we'll be looking at that, we will just do what we can to find an answer, is very important. And I think maintaining that is really, really key. Before that project, it's been very fragmented. We have a negative result, well, we'll call you at some point. But this gives us the opportunity to push knowledge forward and to continue working on this thing. And it does give people hope, and it does give, we did make lots of discoveries about that. So in terms of research updates, sorry.
No, it's fine, Panos, go on.
So in terms of research updates, so I think that's one issue with research. So with research, we don't really have time frames. So we're trying something and then we're trying something else and so on and so forth. From my point of view, and what we are trying to do at least is when we have a research commitment to someone, we are trying to keep that contact. Because I think it's really not nice. I gave a sample 10 years ago, never heard about it. So we are trying to keep a contact. But that's obviously a challenge with the workload and so on and so forth. And I think that's something we do need to look into. And when we're getting further research funding, we're trying to factor that in.
Just a very quick follow-on question on that theme, Panos, is that we've had a question, if someone has had a genetic test a while ago as part of a research project or even a genetic test, but doesn't have a result, would this be kept on their medical records that this had happened?
The short answer is no. So the research result doesn't really talk too much with the NHS component. So actually the answer is it depends on the research team. So let's say if you have, for us, we're the same people who do the clinical testing and the same people who do the research. So we do link these things together because it's okay to do it if you're the same principal investigator. But
so basically not sure. Yes, it could be or it couldn't be. You'd have to speak to your ophthalmologist. Okay. So I think yeah. So a question for the whole board, maybe starting with the clinical and medical research side. Are gene therapies only available to young children?
I can try that. So the answer is no. The gene therapy is available to everyone, so it's not just the young children. So that's why we want to test people. That's why we want to find the people who have these changes in this specific gene RP65, because that would probably make them eligible. So it's even if someone had the condition for 20 years, get a genetic test. If we find the answer, you might be eligible. Yes.
So I think one of the questions that we've had before, which is similar to that question, is where therapies and treatments attach themselves to how far your disease has progressed. Is there any further information that you could maybe give the professionals to share around? I know it's like sort of, a needle in a haystack trying to come up with that explanation, but maybe just a bit more information about that side of things.
I'm not sure I got exactly the question, but I will try to give an answer. So there are really three things that there's active research on from that. The one is gene therapy, and of course it has been successful for lots of months. There's lots of trials happening. The other thing that has been tried is stem cell technologies, where if the retina has completely degenerated, you're just trying to replace the cells. That is still a little bit far off. There are trials on that. Of course, there's lots of work being done, but we are a bit more cautious about what to expect from these trials. And the third one is retinal implants. So if someone has had the condition for many years, and it's a very aggressive condition where lots of the cells degenerate, then you can just look into replacing with an implant. Those are the three technologies. And of course, there are lots of emerging things like small molecules, etc. But for different stages of the condition, different things would apply. So if there's,
that's brilliant, thank you. So we've had a question around inherited macular conditions and whether genetic testing is available for this group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So and we are getting it's a good test. We are getting answers. We think it's giving us useful information. Many times it just tells us about the progression, how is the condition going to progress, about the mode of inheritance, because it can be autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive. So yeah, we are testing for that. It's in fact one of the major indications for testing.
Great. So, well, yeah, absolutely. So any families that the audience are dealing with that have inherited macular conditions can go through exactly the same process, which is great. I had a question from the floor. Are you planning any articles in the optical press soon, or is there anything or any references that you could give the audience to do any further reading?
Was that to all of us, do you think, or to panelists? I mean, in terms of Unlock Genetics, we will be launching an awareness campaign next week to sort of to community, to the sight loss community, but also to the professional community. So that will obviously happen, and we'll be launching it to our community specifically tomorrow at our conference. So that's Unlock Genetics. The professionals page on the Unlock Genetics website does have some quite good general resources for further reading for professionals, which might be a good place to start for professionals. But I don't know if Panos has got any other suggestions.
No, I think you covered it, Kate. I think it's key to so that this will go to the healthcare professionals and to the community and so on and so forth. And I think we are. That's a good first port of call. But we are publishing, of course.
Thank you. So we've managed to have whipped through 25 minutes in an incredibly, what feels like a shorter period of time. So I just wanted to say thank you all for joining us today. It's been absolutely amazing, both for the presentations and for your ability to think on your feet live on a screen when questions are being fired at you. So thank you all very much. And just to let all of the attendees know that we will be launching Unlock Genetics to our community tomorrow at our annual conference, and we'll be launching an awareness campaign. So please spread the word to your clients. It's an incredibly useful and comforting piece of information, and not only helps the community, but all of the researchers and clinicians trying to move all of this forward. So thank you ever so much, everybody. And I think that we're on to the next session very, very shortly. So thank you very much. Cheers, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sight and Sound Technology is the leading supplier of specialist technology, training and support for people with disabilities across the UK and Ireland. With offices in Northampton, Glasgow and Dublin, our team of expert staff can provide a localised service wherever you are. We've been in the business for over 40 years, and we're proud to say that in that time, we've represented some of the industry's leading brands. Our technology is used by people in school, at college, in work and at home to increase independence, productivity and access to information. At Sight and Sound Technology, people are at the heart of what we do. From the initial conversation to our consultation, purchase, expert training and lifetime technical support, we believe that having that personal relationship with our customers is what sets us apart. The past year has been difficult, but has also presented us with new and exciting opportunities. And as we brought our entire operation online, our people continued to deliver our range of high-quality services from home. And for our customers, the technology and services we provide can be life-changing.
Sam visited me at my home, providing an excellent demonstration of the device. He explained how it worked and allowed me good hands-on experience trying it out for myself. This gave me a clear sense of the benefits the L-Braille could offer me in both my work and leisure pursuits.
What I love about Sight and Sound Technology is really simple. They are the one-stop shop as far as I'm concerned, and they're there at every stage. So if you're looking for training, or if you simply have a question, or you're having an issue with a piece of technology, they always reply. They're always happy to help. They genuinely care, and they really want to make sure that your world is more accessible.
For further information, call us in Northampton on 01604 798 070 or visit us on the web at www.sightandsound.co.uk.